Look, I do think that rationing is on the table. They'll call it demand management. We all know what it is. But I just don't think they'll do it this side of Easter. I think they'll try and have Easter as a scene setter in a positive way. I think that's why you've got things like the excise announced. It will not flow through to people filling up for Easter, mind you. It'll be 2 weeks or so before that runs through the distribution network. But it's meant to be a feel-good going into Easter, and I think they're going to hit us, as Morrison did, a few days down the track. It certainly was fuel, the issue again of the day in the Parliament. The Coalition want more transparency, and I have to say I agree with them here. We got stats all the way through COVID. There was a transparency about that. We're all kept in the loop. We're not getting that now from the government. We've got some states being a bit more upfront than others, but there is no national statistical provision, and I think that's where the Prime Minister's starting to look a bit mean and tricky.
Well, it's been a frustrating thing as a journalist, I have to say, Peter, to be able to get that regular number to show people how many petrol stations are out of fuel, one type, right across the country. We've been getting it in dribs and drabs when questions are asked in question time. Remember at the start of the pandemic, it was like pulling teeth trying to get a national data board of how many COVID cases there were. You'd imagine that lessons being learned, that behind the scenes they're trying to work on this and get it done. The other thing too is, remember that fuel task force coordinator? We haven't actually seen her. Part of this in the COVID pandemic was picking someone who was front-facing, out there, able to reassure people. Remember, it was General Fruin from the Army talking about the vaccine rollout at the time. You need someone out there who's not really political, I would say, who's able to do that nuts and bolts questions of here's where the fuel is, here's what we're doing. That communication side, I think, could be improved.
I think the PM has been really spooked by the politics of this. I think he's underestimated how fast it's moving out in the community, how much people actually understand about fuel. They're watching, obviously, what's happening with farmers and the transport sector. But you don't need to run out to worry about running out. You know what I mean? You can see that your tank's coming down. You can see that your Bowsers locally might be running dry. You can also see, if you're watching your dollars, the price ratcheting up. I think that's the pressure point for the PM. He's also not upfront enough in the chamber, Trudy. Have a look at this question today.
There are reports today government ministers have cancelled travel and events in April. Has the government received advice of any additional fuel ships bound for Australia that have been delayed or cancelled?
If he's referring to what was a proposed trip by myself for Anzac Day in Gallipoli on April 25. Yes, because of the circumstances of travel to Turkey at the moment, obviously I have cancelled it. I've prioritised what we are dealing with at the moment, engaging with our regional partners. That's the responsible and the right thing to do.
Okay, slippery response there. He pivots straight into his own travel. But he should have answered the question in relation to the fuel ships, but he just dodges all of that.
Yeah, we saw that repeated question to the Prime Minister and other ministers today about these ships that were cancelled. The line repeatedly from Chris Bowen and the Prime Minister was that of those cancelled, they've now been replaced and some. So some level of reassurance that at least for the month of April we're getting ships into Australia. The bigger question comes in the longer term. Also that question mark about what Donald Trump, the president, is going to announce tomorrow, Peter. That could shift all of this. Is it an announcement to end the war from the US side? Is it an announcement of ground troops? All of this has huge ripples right across the world. And you'd imagine if you're the Prime Minister, given the White House announced that only a few minutes before the embargo lifted here, they might have regretted the timing. But nonetheless, they're pushing ahead tonight with this 7 p.m. address.
Yeah, look, you're right to make the point that our Prime Minister announced his national address to the nation before he knew that the President was having a big one tomorrow. So we could find our Prime Minister's got to be back to do some mopping up by the end of the weekend. Hey, just quickly, I know there'd been long negotiations behind closed doors about increasing the size of the federal parliament. But the moment the opposition came out and said that they would not do it, and sure, I think Labor had the numbers with the Greens to put it through anyway, I think the PM got really spooked by the politics. Would you say this is now dead in the water?
In terms of the change to the House of Representative expansion, that seems to be killed off now. The Prime, you have to feel sorry for Don Farrell, I thought. He's a very senior minister. He'd been the one out carrying these reforms just the day before at the press club, talking about increasing the size of Parliament, he said, is what great Labor leaders do. A day later, his Labor leader stands on the floor and essentially kills off this idea entirely. I think the raw politics play out here. The Prime Minister doesn't want to have a fight about more politicians here in the Canberra bubble. That doesn't play well in ordinary suburbs. But there is still, they haven't ruled out potentially expanding the number of senators going to the Territory, so potentially one more here for the ACT and the NT. We'll watch this space.
Yeah, can I just make the point too? A lot of people say, oh, but there's a nexus between the House and the Senate. If you increase the Senate, you've got to increase the House. No, the constitutional nexus only relates to the terms. So if you have 3-year terms in the House, you have 6 years in the Senate. If you will go to 4 in the House, you go to 8 in the Senate. People get the nexus provisions confused, so I want to clear that up. Thank you, Trudy.